Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Football Friday Tailgate Show. My name is Kadin Pounders. I'm the sports editor at the Franklin Free Press, and I'm your host for the Football Friday Tailgate Show every Friday starting at 5:30. We got a good show for you coming up tonight. We've got L.A. Shepherd coming in segment 3, Coach Jonathan Raper of the Belgreen Bulldogs coming in segment 2, and we'll have another celebrity guest picker of the college football action happening this weekend in our final segment of the evening. Of course, before we get to our guest tonight, we have to take you through all the football action that's happening here in Franklin County. High school football action aplenty tonight. We've got 5 games with the six high school teams in Franklin County. We're going to start with the 2 that are facing off against each other tonight, and that's Belgreen versus Tharptown. Belgreen's coming into this game 2-0 against 0-2 Tharptown. It is homecoming for Belgreen, but what did each of these 2 teams do last week? Belgreen earned its second win, a blowout win, beating Summerton Christian 43-6 at Sparks Stadium. It was their home opener, while Tharptown fell on the road at Waterloo 24-8. For Belgreen, last week was another big win, and just continuing to stack on win on top of win at this point. So great. If you're a Belgreen fan, you love what you're seeing from the Bulldogs. Tharptown, 0-2 start, kind of got handed it to them there in week 1 against Danville, a big loss there, but saw some improvement against a Waterloo team on the road, and gave up just 24 points, which is the fewest that the Wildcats have given up since their last win back in 2023. So, it's some improvement there by Tharptown, following a few touchdowns shy of Waterloo. But let's take you into this game tonight when we hear from Coach Jonathan Raper of the Bulldogs. In our next segment, I'm sure we'll hear some of this, but Belgreen will be the favorite in this game. Absolutely, they beat Tharptown last year, 30-14. So they're going to come in after 2 huge wins, and Tharptown two losses. Belgreen's definitely going to be the favorite in this game. The thing about this game, though, is, like I said, it's Belgreen's homecoming game, so there's incentive there for Tharptown to try to ruin it, but also a lot of distractions, as I believe this is Belgreen's first football homecoming. So there's distractions that are always there for a football team and teenage kids during homecoming week, building floats and hanging out with classmates just about every day of the week, all kinds of different things, extracurriculars that are going on throughout the week. So there's that distraction aspect of it. And then you have Tharptown, and these 2 teams in every other sport are rivals. And early on in Belgreen's program now, these 2 teams see each other as their biggest rival. If you talk to the players, so there's that. So definitely Tharptown is going to want to try to ruin it, but I think Belgreen is definitely the huge favorite here, and I think Belgreen will walk away with the win. It's just a matter of those, I guess, psychological things, the distractions. Belgrane's still got to be ready, go out there ready to play and be prepared, because I think this is an improved Tharptown team that improved from week 1 to week 2, and obviously you see it in the scoreline there at Waterloo. That game last year was Tharptown had a bigger deficit in that game last year. As I said, I'm sure Coach Raper will have more things to say about that game in the next segment, but I know it's an anticipated matchup for both sides. Both sides have it circled on their calendar, and we'll see what happens when these 2 teams meet tonight at Sparks Stadium. Next up, we've got Phil Campbell. Phil Campbell will be on the road for its next game at Vinemont tonight. Eagle Stadium, kickoff at 7 p.m. This is Phil Campbell's first region opener against Vinemont last season. They needed 4 overtimes to win this game. I know they're going to want to try to put it away a little bit sooner than that this year. Last week, Phil Campbell fell at Class 4A Hamilton 42-26. Despite the loss, I thought there was some, just looking at the stats and stuff, there were some good things, some bright points to point out for the Bobcats. Coach Jacob Hamilton, entering his 3rd season, or in his 3rd season now, has talked about wanting to be more balanced on offense. I think you saw that with the performance against Hamilton last Friday night. Hastings Scott, the quarterback, had over 100 yards passing, and then as a team, the Bobcats rushed for over 100 yards, had 3 or 4 different guys carry the ball. For Scott at quarterback, had 4 or 5 different targets through the air, so a little bit more balance than last year. Definitely not the, I think it was 22 passes, 29 carries. Definitely not the 90-10 ratio that we saw from Phil Campbell last year. So bright spot there. They were not expected. I don't think they were really expected to win that game against Hamilton, a good Class 4A team, solid Class 4A team. So, but heading into this matchup tonight against Vinemont, I think they're the favorites in this game, despite being on the road. Phil Campbell has never lost to Vinemont, though the series is not very long. They've only played. This is only the 4th meeting, but Phil Campbell's never lost. They're on the road. They won this game last year. I think that given the fact that Phil Campbell is more balanced this year, plays in their favor in this game. Vinemont's 0-2, coming off 2 big losses. So, Phil Campbell may not have the momentum, but I do think they have the talent and the motivation to go out and get a win tonight at Vinemont. Next week, the Bobcats will continue region play. They will host Oakman, their first home game of the season. That's next Friday. Second region game for Phil Campbell, hosting Oakman. And let's move on to one of Phil Campbell's county rivals. That's Red Bay. Red Bay 1-0, traveling on the road to the University Charter School, who is 0-1. We'll be playing this game down at the University of West Alabama Stadium, Tigers Stadium in Livingston. So quite a bit of travel for Red Bay in this one, but this one's an interesting one because last year Red Bay lost this game to, I'm just going to call them UCS, lost this game to UCS 16-14 last year. That was not a game that Red Bay was expected to lose, kind of a game that probably would have been considered a gimme win. UCS has only been playing football. This is their 3rd year of football. 1A school. So last year that was a game that Red Bay was expected to win, and they lost. This year, obviously, the coming out of the gate, Red Bay may have surprised some people by just putting it on Lamar County 41-8. The Tyler Jeffries era starting off with a bang. Of course, Jeffries was hired in the summer and has come in was hired about 2 months before the season started. So he's come in and done a really great job. As you can see, that was a game last year that against Lamar County that Red Bay was beat, I think, by like 20 points. So I said that Red Bay's defense last week during the show, I said that Red Bay's defense would be the question mark. There was no question marks about the defense's performance against Lamar County last week, giving up just 8 points, and that touchdown was scored late in garbage time. So had a 35-0 shutout at halftime, tacked on a little cushion touchdown there in the second half, gave up the touchdown late in garbage time. Really an impressive performance by Red Bay on offensively. Jackson Vinson, who had a 1,000-yard rushing season last year, just picked up right where he left off from last season, had 225 yards, was the Franklin Free Press Athlete of the Week this week, scored 5 of Red Bay's 6 touchdowns, 4 on the ground and 1 through the air. Quarterback Jeremiah Thorne, a senior, was a perfect 6 of 6 through the air with a passing 2 passing touchdowns. So great performance all around by Red Bay last week. I expect that to carry over to this week's game at UCS. Again, a long way to travel, and that may coming off a big win, an exciting win. There may be some a little bit of lag there when they first hit the field, but I definitely expect a different outcome from last season. Definitely expect Red Bay to score a lot more than 16 points, and if they give it that much, that's pretty good. So really excited to see what Red Bay has got left this year. Obviously coming out winning like that first week may have been a little bit of a surprise given a new coach and all that, but they did have all these players returning, really good players like Jackson Vinson, and like I said, Jeremiah Thorne at quarterback, had a whole year of experience back there last year. So really excited to see what else this Red Bay Tigers program can do. Next week, Red Bay will start region play themselves with a home contest against the reigning region champion Winston County. So going to start off region play with a tough one, but we'll see what Red Bay can do this year. Try to get back to playoffs again this year. Region play is obviously very important. So that game next week against Winston County, tough way to open region play, but I think that will give us all a good idea of just how good this Red Bay team this year is. Up next, we've got Russellville hosting Lawrence County. This is another region game, region contest that Russellville is definitely going to be looking to try to make a statement in tonight. Last time out, Russellville lost to Mars Hill 47-19. That dropped them to 0-2 on the season. First time that Russellville has started 0-2 for, I think, 4 or 5 years. Maybe that 2020 season, I think they started 0-2, losing to Grissom and then to Deschler. But that game last week against Mars Hill, I think kind of went how you might have expected. Mars Hill obviously has a really good football team, has 2 Division I running backs on that team by itself, one guy going to UAB, another guy going to Troy, and that's the 2 guys, Higgins and Jackson Penn. Those are the 2 guys that scored a majority of the touchdowns against the Golden Tigers. Thought, there were some bright spots again like there was when they lost to Deschler. Defense for the first quarter and a half played pretty solid and got Mars Hill off the field. It's kind of like a deja vu with, that first drive Mars Hill scored to start the game and on their first drive, and then after that, the Russellville defense kind of buckled down for the next quarter and a half, and then really the latter stages of the second quarter is when things started to fall apart. Russellville, just like Deschler, again, deja vu, just couldn't sustain drives, couldn't consistently move the ball down the field, and when they got into the red zone, couldn't find the end zone. So, bright spots, but there's still things that, blaring things that Russellville needs to fix. And again, this is just a symptom of their youth. This is, as we've talked about plenty of times, this is a young team. And this young team tonight is going to be playing, to me, it's most important game of the year to this point. You can talk about the last 2 games, but those are non-region games that don't really count when it comes to making the postseason. This one tonight does, and given what we've seen, Russellville is obviously going to be itching, going to be pushing hard for a really much need to win, and a region win is all the more important. On the flip side, you've got to think of Lawrence County. This game is always heated. There's always jabbing. There's always, clapbacks and people, the 2 teams talking to each other, fans and players. Lawrence County, you look at it from their perspective, they're really going to want to push, kick Russellville while they're down. They come into this game 1-1. The Red Devils got a win over Rogers last week. Their 1 win. But if you ask me what I expect to see tonight, I think Russellville comes in. They're obviously the favorite. They won 27 meetings, lost 5 of those. They've won 20 of the last 21 meetings. Last year, they beat the Red Devils 42-20 in Moulton. If you ask me what I think is going to happen this year, I think Russellville's going to win the football game. What I would like to see from them is to get the running game going. They struggled the first 2 games getting the running attack going. Taurus Davis, I think, had less than 40 yards last week against Mars Hill, though he got most of the carries. And, one bright spot that I've talked about was Devin Morris, a junior running back that came in the second half and got a little bit going on the ground, more of a bruiser compared to Taurus Davis, more of a speed and athleticism guy. So, those 2 could make a good combo back in the backfield. But overall, the run game has not worked in Russellville's advantage. That's put more pressure on Wick Goodwin. Now, Goodwin has done a good job of, absorbing that pressure that's been put on him, and has been making plays with his arms. Had some mistakes, threw 3 interceptions last week against Mars Hill, but again, he's still young, still a sophomore. But he's done a pretty good job of making plays. But that if you can't get the running game going, that only makes the job tougher for your quarterback. So I really expect this week for Russellville, and I haven't heard this from Coach Goodwin at all. I'm just making an assumption. I really expect that they're going to make the running game and establishing the running game against Lawrence County a priority. So, and then defensively on the other side of the ball, look, that last week's game against Mars Hill I think was an aberration, giving up 47 points. Like I said, I think it kind of fell apart there in the second quarter especially. But defense for Russellville played pretty well in the first quarter. I expect this game the defense to kind of look how it did in the first game against Deschler. Bend, don't break, make more plays. then they give up. And when Lawrence County gets in the red zone, just like they did against Deshler, I expect the Golden Tigers to bow up and make a stand there in the red zone. And that will, if they can do that, I think they'll have a very good chance of winning the game. Like I said, I think they will win the game, but defense is going to have to play good again this year. An 0-2 start doesn't look good on paper for Russell, but I don't think it conveys quite what this Golden Tiger team can do. I think this week's contest against Lawrence County, whatever they do, I think that's going to be more of a measuring stick of where Russell is so far this year. Next week, Russell will host its third consecutive home game as East Limestone. The Indians of East Limestone come to Russell. That game will be next Friday at 7 p.m. at Golden Tiger Stadium. And then lastly, we have Vina. Vina is hosting its home opener, hosting the Phillips Bears at Franklin Hester Stadium tonight. Last week, Vina was shut out on the road at Brindley Mountain, 41-0. Not the result we were hoping to see for Vina. Got a win over Brindley Mountain last year in overtime. Definitely kind of the opposite result here. Big blowout loss to Brindley Mountain. Red Devils are 18-47 all time against region rival Phillips coming into this game, but last year Vina did snap a 4-game losing skid to the Bears, so beating them 28-6. You'd like to see that same result if you're a Vina Red Devil again tonight. Going to be tough. We talked on the show last week. Coach Renfro was on the show, and he talked about how they've had to try to adjust to losing a lot of really good players on that team last year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, coming in with a brand-new quarterback, changing guys from one position to the other, playing positions they're just not used to, really, have not played a lot. So could be one of those seasons that's tough for Vina, given just looking at the result from last week, and that loss is going to have taken some of the wind out of Vina's sails. But this is a game they can get back on track with. Phillips is also coming off a loss to Marion County, a big defeat to Marion County. So both teams are going to be looking for a win. I think this is one of those games that Vina can win, but obviously going to have to show lots of improvements on both sides of the ball. And they always say that the biggest improvements from week 1 to week 2. This is week 2 for Vina. You hope to see the improvement that this week that can hopefully get them to a win and more than just a handful of wins this year. So we'll see what the Red Devils can do tonight at home against Phillips. Next week, Vina will travel to Florence to face region foe Shoals Christian. So that'll do it for our roundup of all the Franklin County football action happening tonight. Up next in our second segment, we're going to have Belgreen coach Jonathan Raper join us, and he's going to talk about his team's game against Tharptown tonight, a homecoming game, a chance to go 3-0 for the first time in program history, the first time in the program's very short history. So looking forward to that conversation with Coach Jonathan Raper coming up next. You won't want to miss it. You're listening to Football Friday Tailgate Show here on WGOL. Welcome back to the Football Friday Tailgate. Your host, Kadin Pounders. We're so glad that you could join us tonight for this edition of the Football Friday Tailgate Show. In this segment, we're going to be joined by head coach of the Belgreen Bulldogs, Jonathan Raper, who in his 2 seasons and the 2 seasons of the program has done some great things. The Bulldogs have made great strides, still considered a junior high program, to the AHSAA, but doing some great things. And he's talking to us right now with a 2-0 record. So welcome to the show, Coach Jonathan Raper. Welcome to the show, Coach Raper. Thank you for joining us. You're going into this Friday night's matchup against Tharptown, 2-0. 2 big wins. At this point last season, you guys were 1-1, kind of snuck past Shoals Christian and took a little bit of a thumping from Summerton Christian. This year, the exact opposite. Got 2 big wins over both those schools, and you're going into this game against Tharptown 2-0. What's the mood with surrounding the program right now?
Well, everyone's excited. The kids are excited, and they're looking forward, to this Friday night's game. Of course, it's our first homecoming. We've never had a homecoming, so that's, added just a little bit more excitement to it. And then, we're playing a county rival, so that, is always, fun. And like I said, so right now we're pretty excited. Everybody's excited about football around here with everything that, to go on top of, just playing a normal Friday night football game, add everything else in. So like I said, it's we're looking forward to Friday night, and hopefully we'll show up and, play hard and give ourselves a chance to, to win.
For people for football fans who have not seen you guys play yet, can you kind of tell us about highlight some of the players that have been key for you guys this year, and what you guys are doing on the football field?
Well, we're a lot older. These kids, most of these kids now have been playing a couple years, and we have more experience than we've ever had. And I think we play the game faster now. We don't think as much, more or less we react, and we're playing football more, and I feel like we're faster on defense and offense. And our kids, have done a good job of, understanding the concepts of what we're trying to do. So they're everything's just a lot smoother from top to bottom on everything we do. And like I said, our offensive lines is improved a lot in that area. Running backs have just, got bigger and stronger and ran the ball so well. And Rush Behrman has played quarterback for us here and done a good job. And we've got, 3 or 4 really good, I feel like, good receivers. And then defensively, we're just we've got up front, we play a lot of kids, so we're able to rotate some kids and keep, some kids fresh, and our linebackers are just getting better, and so is our secondary. They're just, we do play some young kids, in there, but they've I say young kids, so most of them's been doing it now 2 years, so they're just not, we started an 8th grader, 2 8th graders, and a couple 10th graders back there and a senior. So, but they've been playing. So that, like I said, that just makes things a lot smoother, and then transition wise, if you have to change something in the middle of the game, that's one of the big things we can do, make adjustments inside during the game this year compared to what we couldn't in the past. So like I said, we have a, ton of kids that just played well. Like I said, our offensive line, and anytime you're scoring as many points as we scored the first 2 games, somebody's got to be blocking, because these games are won and lost in the trenches, offensive line and defensive line, and those 2 units have done a very good job so far this year.
Coach, I'm kind of interested. I do a lot of before every week, I look at 6 different football programs every week, and sometimes they'll play programs that have been around for 5-10 years, and I'm not saying we get ahead of ourselves or anything, but some of these programs have been around for a decade or so, still relatively new, but can't win a football game. They're like 2-50 or something. What is it about this group of kids, this group of players, that's allowed them to, like you've said, just take leap and bounds in progress over the last 2 years?
Well, these young men have worked hard since I've got here. I mean, they've got after it, during the summer. They've been up here and been in the weight room, and they put a lot into it. And I told them that's what it would take for us to be successful and have a chance to be good, was we had to put the work in. Nobody was going to give us anything, and nobody was just going to, roll. I said, more or less, everybody's excited to play us because this is all new to us. So I said, there's more excited a lot of times playing us than they are other people. So I said, we're going to have to put a lot of work in, and these kids have. And we have, like I said, I feel like we have some very good athletes, and that helps, that's really worked. But, I think the bottom line is our kids have put a lot of time and effort in, and they're seeing some reward, for the job that they've put in when nobody's watching. and I think that makes a big difference. And like I said, I feel like this year our team has really gelled, and they playing well together and getting after it. And so that, it's like I said, it's just that's a combination of a couple of different things, that's, really helped on that part. Even our older kids and our younger kids have really meshed this year. And sometimes that's a hard factor, with you got, 11th, 12th graders, and then you drop down and you got 9th, 10th graders that are playing too, the age gap. But like I said, they've done a good job of, having one goal, and that's, try to build a program and try to be successful and play hard and let the chips fall and give ourselves a chance to win on Friday night, and they've understood that, and they've bought into a lot of the stuff we're trying to do, and that's made our job a lot easier.
You talked about previously a few minutes ago about this being homecoming for you guys, first homecoming, football homecoming. Excuse me. I remember when I played, and this is a week. No matter where you go to school, this is a week that kind of feels geared, always feels geared towards the football game at the end of the week on Friday night. If you're a student, you're out, and there's all the extracurriculars, all the extra activities that you wouldn't normally get. There's a lot of distractions. How do you get your team to, have fun on homecoming week, but at the same time, still have them ready to play on Friday night?
Well, that's a good question. We've talked about that all week long, and this is, like you said, a new experience for these young men, and they need to enjoy the experience and but I said, don't take anything for granted, and you realize at the end of the day, we're here to, play football, and you got to be focused. And for the most part this week so far, we've done that. We at the end of the day, we always say, we try to improve 1% every day, and let's see where we're at, at the end of the year. And, we say this is a day was a great practice, good practice, and I told them yesterday, we've had 3 days of practice, and we've only had one day that I felt like that was just before it was over with, we lost focus, and and it ended badly, and then we had a good practice yesterday, and, I said, give me 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is here today, and lock in and, get to going. And I said, Friday, you got a parade going, you got a pep rally, you got a bonfire on Thursday night. I said, all that stuff's good, and you got to enjoy it. But, once we come back after that parade, we got to realize we got a football game that Friday night, later that night, and we got to get locked in and get focused on what our job is that we have to do and why we have homecoming and the reason we have homecoming. And that's, there's a lot of unknown factors here on that part because they never experienced it, and, just hope that you stress that enough, and when it comes game time, we're locked in and ready to roll on that. But, we've talked about it, and, time will tell how we react to all this. But, I feel good that these young men understand, and they will do a good job in that area. Like I said, I feel like that when it comes time to play, that they'll be ready to play and give it all they got. Hopefully, we can come out on top.
And finally, your opponent, Coach Tharptown, like you said, a county rival, and a school that many of these players are familiar with, playing basketball or baseball or whichever sport you choose. Very familiar with Tharptown and its players. What do you expect to see from Tharptown this week? I think they kind of improved from week 1 to week 2 against, still lost against Waterloo, but seemed gave it the fewest points they've given up in about 2 years. So, what do you expect from Tharptown this week, and how do you plan to attack them and get the win?
Well, they're a very well-coached team, and like I said, I've seen them on film. They look very good, and you know, we've got an offensive game plan, defensive game plan, and hopefully we can execute it and play hard and get after it. We're going to have to do all those things to give ourselves a chance to win. I tell them all the time, it's not who the best team is on Friday night. It's never who plays the best. You may, there's going to be times that you play people that are better than you, and you may play somebody that you're better than, but they don't mean you're going to win. It's ever who plays the best on a Friday night and don't beat themselves. And that's one of the things we've stressed to our kids, that, we've got to show up. We can't have a ton of penalties. We can't turn the ball over. We have to give ourselves a chance to win. And if we do that, then we have a chance. But if we don't, if we fumble to turn the ball over and we have a ton of penalties, it's hard to overcome that and give yourself a chance to win. And Thorptown, like I said, looks very good on tape. When I've seen them, vastly improved, I think, from last year. And I think it's going to be a good, hard-fought football game, and whoever who makes the least amount of mistakes is going to have a chance to win it, at the end. So we'll keep our mistakes to a minimum and give ourselves a chance to be successful.
All right, Coach. We appreciate you for joining us here on the Football Friday Tailgate Show. Good luck to you guys on Friday night against Tharptown, and enjoy homecoming.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having us, and hopefully we'll see a lot of people out here Friday night. Thank you.
That was Coach Jonathan Raper of the Belgreen Bulldogs. We thank him again for joining us tonight on the Football Friday Tailgate Show. Up next in Segment 3, we'll have LA's Locks of the Week, and then in Segment 4, we'll have our Celebrity Picker. So you've been listening to the Football Friday Tailgate Show on WGOL. We'll be right back. Stick around. Welcome back to the Football Friday Tailgate Show here on WGOL. In this third segment, you know what time it is. It's time for LA's Locks of the Week. But before we get to Lucas's picks for this week, we have to congratulate him on his 4-1 week last week, correctly picking Florida State, Auburn, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. Unfortunately for him, couldn't go perfect. Notre Dame Fighting Irish came up short against Miami in a pretty good game there on Sunday night. Luke, what were some of the games last week that really fascinated you by the outcome?
One of the best games of the entire slate there, obviously, was LSU and Clemson. I was a little bit surprised at how well the defense played for LSU. Another one I really enjoyed was Ohio State and Texas. If you like defensive battles and struggles in the trenches, that's what you got in that game. Arch Manning kind of came out and was a little underwhelming, but I think you'll see improvement as the season goes on with him. You got to understand, Arch Manning was playing against the number one defense in the country in Ohio State on the road. Lee Corso's last true love pick there, headgear wise. So a lot of things going against Texas, but a 14-7 defeat there. I expected more scoring, but ultimately I thought that was a really hard-fought battle between two really impressive football teams. Another one I liked was South Carolina and Virginia Tech. That was highly entertaining to me. I enjoy, again, as I said last week, I look for South Carolina to be one of those sleeper teams in the SEC and potentially be a contender to win the to show up in Atlanta and play in the SEC championship. So, those are a few of them. Notre Dame Miami had a lot of entertainment to it. I thought that was a great game. Notre Dame battled back to get back in it at the back end, and on Sunday there, a Sunday night game, you really can't ask for a better finish than a team to get the ball back with a minute and a half and see what happens.
What did happen was that Notre Dame got sacked. That's not the finish. I want the ball in the air going into the end zone in the last play of the game. I don't want the quarterback getting sacked with no timeouts left. So next time, better 2-minute drill from Notre Dame, maybe. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to your locks of the week. Lucas, who do you got coming up first?
Yeah, the first game for this week is going to be I went with them last week. I'm going to roll them twice. Ole Miss minus 10.5 at Kentucky. I understand it's on the road. That's in Lexington. You would think that after putting up 63 in a game against Georgia State that maybe they come out and maybe they're a little bit more sluggish. You got an SEC opponent. But what I can tell you is I watched Ole Miss play that Georgia State football game. They look impressive on offense. I think defensively they need to come along a little bit better, but only gave up 7 points total to a Georgia State team. So what I noticed from Kentucky, they're still Kentucky. We should start calling them the Iowa of the SEC because they refuse to throw the football. And they refuse to score points. So in a game where they keep score, it's kind of important that you do that. But I like Ole Miss, especially on a kind of a revenge game from last year where they lost to Kentucky. I like for Ole Miss to really dominate this football game. It could go completely opposite of what I'm saying, but just on paper, with all those ingredients, I like Lane Kiffin to score as much as he'd like to. Second game on the slate is going to be another SEC team, Florida. Hosting South Florida, and it's a 17.5 point spread there in favor of the Gators. I like Florida to cover that. I know that seems like a big number. Look, definitely added some players through the portal. They are improved, as you saw in the game against Boise State. But I like Florida to have more offensive firepower. Defensively, I think Florida is very improved. So I expect that they will limit South Florida to very few points scored in this football game. I'm thinking they score maybe 2 touchdowns. I like for Florida, especially Billy Napier, with, he kind of cooled down the seat a little bit last year, going on a really good stretch on the back end of the year. But I think that seat's still warm for him. So this is one of those games where Florida needs to come out. They need to really gel, look like they're a cohesive offensive group.
Third game, it looks like, is another SEC team, but they're going to be on the other end of the line this time. A matchup last year that I regret staying up till midnight to watch last year when it was played in Arizona.
Yeah, you're right. This one is going to be in Starkville, Mississippi, as Mississippi State will host the Sun Devils of Arizona State. Arizona State, surprisingly, this kind of looks like a trap line to me at -6.5 in favor of the Sun Devils, but I'm going to be one of the suckers who plays it because I like Arizona State to win this game pretty handedly. Mississippi State does look improved based on what I saw over the weekend, but I still think that's a team with a lot of holes and not a very solid defense. So, Southern Miss was able to do some really good things against that Mississippi State Bulldog defense. So Arizona State, I'll look for them to kind of have their way in this game. It's going to be an electric atmosphere as Wade Davis Stadium always is. But I think after the first quarter, that dies down, and once they realize they're down 21-3, you won't hear many cowbells. So Arizona State to cover 6.5. Moving on from that game, I do want to preface this next pick by saying this is totally just an odds pick to make a little bit more money if you want to really gamble that way. Of course, this is for entertainment purposes only, but. Vanderbilt as a money line pick against Virginia Tech on the road. Now, the odds aren't extremely, different one way from playing the spread to playing the money line, but you do get a little bit better odds, which means a little bit better payout. Vanderbilt's actually a dog in this one by, I believe, a point or a point and a half. I believe that's simply because it's on the road in Blacksburg, Virginia there. Virginia Tech looked pretty competitive in the first half in that game against South Carolina, but as you saw depth and things like that take place, they started to muddle out. I like Vanderbilt in this football game as a money line pick, just to up your odds and up your payout a little bit. And I think Vanderbilt gets the win. It's one that if you're not confident playing it, don't play it. But for this week, it's a lock to me. I think Vanderbilt wins this game outright. And lastly, a game outside of the SEC has no bearing on the Southeastern Conference. Hawaii is hosting Sam Houston State. Hawaii is a 6.5 point favorite. I like Hawaii to cover in this game. You saw that they have some offensive power in that first game when they played Stanford, got the win 23-20. Now, granted, they got shellacked last week by Arizona, but Arizona is obviously an superior opponent to them on paper, and that game kind of went the way that I expected it to. Here's the issue: is that as bad as Hawaii may seem in your mind, I can promise you Sam Houston is worse. They just aren't a very good football team right now. They're going to need some time to really gel that team together. over the next few years. I like Hawaii to almost run away in this game, and when I say that, I mean 10, 14 points. I'm not trying to get ahead of myself here, but 6.5 feels like a really favorable line to bet Hawaii's way. So I like Hawaii as a lock.
Well, thank you for those picks, Lucas. If you can go 4-1 again this week, then I'm sure we'll be making. Besides those games that you picked, what are some of the games that stand out to you? I think we only have one top 25 matchup this week, Oklahoma and Michigan. Are there any other games? Well, you can talk about that game, but are there any other games that stand out to you this week?
Well, first of all, full disclosure, to pay my rent. I gamble for a little bit of fun. But no. Yeah, Oklahoma and Michigan, it's probably going to be arguably the most entertaining game on the slate for this weekend. Oklahoma is actually a favorite in that game, which was kind of surprising. I don't know which way I would lean in that. That's why I probably won't touch that. But another one that I really look forward to, and it's kind of early in the day, is Kansas and Missouri. If you know anything about Kansas, it's got a really good quarterback. Missouri's got a really stout-looking defense, so I'm excited to see how the balance of power turns out in that one. And then you've got there's one more game that I was going to mention, Illinois at Duke. That's an 11 a.m. kickoff. You may look into betting that one. It's a 2.5-point line in favor of the Illini. So if it's one of those you want to sweat out early in the day, where it's those lines are kind of fun to me when you got a 2 or 3 point line there, because typically that means it's going to be an entertaining game. So if you watch it early at 11 a.m., you got to sweat where it can go either way. Maybe you just throw a little bit of money on there and just kind of see what happens. So Illinois, Duke, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Michigan, all three worthy of being watched.
Sounds like another fun Saturday and another fun weekend of football. Thank you again, Luke, for joining us here on your LA Locks of the Week segment. And Luke will be back here same time, same place next week for the Week 3 games. We're going to take a short break and be back for our final segment of the Football Friday Tailgate Show here on WGOL. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Football Friday Tailgate Show here on WGOL. We are glad to have Coach Donovan Hand of the Red Bay Tigers baseball program here to join us for our fourth and final segment. He's going to be our celebrity guest picker for this week's college football games. Coach Hand is heading into his 5th season as the head coach of the Red Bay baseball program. Last 2 years, the Tigers have had a lot of success, making it to the semifinals back in 2024 and the quarterfinals last year, the Class 2A playoffs. Donovan Hand also played Major League Baseball himself for a couple years with the Reds and the Brewers. So we know that Coach Hand knows baseball. We're going to find out if he knows anything about college football this evening. Thank you, Coach Hand, for joining us on the show. We've talked in the past about when you first took the job at Red Bay. You said you had a 5-year plan going into it, and you've been able to accomplish some of your goals that you set out, ahead of time, ahead of those 5 years that you had set out. Went to the finals 2 seasons ago, and then the quarterfinals last year with this baseball team after, I believe, your first season only had about 5 wins. So the turnaround in 3 or 4 years has been remarkable there. What's been the process like of changing that program, turning it around, and getting it back to winning a lot of baseball games and competing for state titles?
Honestly, the players have bought in. I mean, we kept, and I say this respectfully, we kept 40 players this year. It's been our 5th season here, and last 2 years have been very special. Obviously, and a couple of those guys, or 5 of those guys that were part of that, graduated this year. So we're going to be a little younger this upcoming year, the 2026 season. But, we talked about as a coaching staff, all the reps and the plan we have in our program, we should be able to absorb people leaving and not lose just a ton. Obviously, they're going to be missed, and we're grateful for all they've done for our program. But guys stepping in have had game reps. They've had great practice reps. And we're hoping that the plan we've had the last few years pays off, and the growing pains are very minimal as we move forward into this year. But we have a lot returning. Carson McGee, Jeremiah Thorne, Aiden Pruitt, Landon Louie,
Khalil Luster. We have a core coming back with some guys like Jackson Swan and Riley Carpenter and Landon Petrie and Dave O'Colburn and some guys that we hope, that fill in and grow quickly to allow us to compete again this year at that high level.
Hopefully you see, and we've talked about Red Bay football on the show already,
Sure.
and hopefully you see, some of the football team see some of the success that you guys on the baseball field have had, and they have guys. Jackson Swan was a guy that caught a touchdown pass last week. But when you talk about players, and you've had, like you mentioned some, and you've had some like Ty Reynolds, all state players. You got to have the players, but you also have to have success. You have to have the right attitude, the right state of mind going into it. When you have success like the way you guys have had the last 2 years, how do you keep the players you do have concentrated and not being complacent, and just keep them going in the direction they need to be going?
A constant thing that we remind everybody. We talked about at the beginning of last year, playing with expectations. Now that there's an expectation for us to do certain things, does not mean we change the way we go about to accomplish those. But we want to make the playoffs. First, you got to win area games. First, you got to be healthy going into 2 area games. And there's steps in the process that we do that we try to keep ourselves checks and balances and remind ourselves. And our guys do a good job of that, because most of the guys that are still with me remember those first couple years. Landon Petrie was my first 7th grade bunch, and he's a junior. These seniors were in 8th grade, and so they still remember, and they do a good job not letting the younger group get complacent. I left the old home plate when we remodeled our stadium, because our stadium was not in the greatest of shape when we started that. So I left the old home plate for a reminder. We meet on it sometimes when I feel like we're getting complacent, to remember it always hasn't been like this. And in order to keep it like this, we got to keep doing the things that's got us to where we're at. So we have little checks and balances. Our coaching staff does a good job. Jamie Mercer will never let you get too high, and Kelby's always there. Kelby Hallmark does a great job of building us up and keeping us in the right mindset. And our junior high coaches as well, Joseph Boyd and my brother Darren Hand, they do a good job of continuing that to remind those guys that are coming not to get complacent, because it can go back to the way it was, and that was no fun for anybody. So we're happy where it's at. We want to keep it there, and we want to continue to move on it, but we can't forget where we came from in a way.
All right, Coach. Well, we know that you know baseball, but we're gonna find out if you know a little bit about college football. I've picked out 5 games for you here, and we're gonna start with number 11 Illinois going on the road to play Duke. The Illini are a 2.5-point favorite in that game. Who do you like in that matchup, Coach?
I'm going to fight the Illini on the road. I believe they're too much for the Blue Devils. The Dukies don't have enough firepower for them, from what I've seen in week 1 or 2 there. So I'm going with the Illini, fighting the Illini on the road.
All right, Illinois taking the first win. Let's go number 12, Arizona State at Mississippi State. Arizona State's a 6.5-point favorite on the road. This was a game last year that I regret staying up to watch. That was the game, I think, when Arizona State kind of showed how good they were going to be last year, came out and surprised people. Number 12, Arizona State at Mississippi State. Who do you like?
Oh, I've got a buddy that's a Mississippi State fan. He'll kill me, but probably Arizona State on the road, unfortunately. I'm hoping jet lag gets him, because I'm an SEC guy when it comes down to it, but I'm going to go with Arizona State.
Probably a good pick there. Kansas at Missouri. Kansas travels to Missouri. They got a senior quarterback, Jalen Daniels, who 2 or 3 years ago was actually like a early season Heisman favorite. He's a senior He's a senior now. Missouri, though, still a touchdown favorite at home. Who do you like there, Kansas or Missouri?
I'm going Missouri at home. I think it's a coin flip, but I hope the home field advantage takes care of the Jayhawks.
All right, Missouri in that one. We're going to go next, our 4th game, number 20, Ole Miss at Kentucky. Maybe a revenge game for Ole Miss, who got upset at home last season. Ole Miss going into it with a 8.5-point favorite. We saw what the Ole Miss offense could do last week, put up a lot of points. Kentucky not so much. Who do you like, Coach?
I'm going fighting Kiffin's on the road, a revenge. You give me this game in week 8, Seems like Lane's teams always start strong and kind of fade towards the end. You give me this game in week 8 or 9, I might go Kentucky, but I'm going Ole Miss on the road.
All right, Ole Miss on the road. And our final game, the only top 25 matchup for this week, number 15 Michigan at number 18 Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a 5.5-point favorite at home. Who do you like, Michigan or Oklahoma?
I'm going SEC. I don't like Michigan. I'm going Oklahoma.
Fair enough, even though
I have a feeling I'm going to be like 3-2.
Well, we'll keep track of it, and we'll see, how everybody, all of our quote-unquote celebrity pickers do at the end of the year. Maybe you can get a WGOL sticker or something. I don't know. We'll find some kind of prize for the celebrity winner. But we appreciate your time, Coach, and obviously good luck. The season's still a few months away, but we appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having us on. Appreciate what you do, bud. Thank you.
That was head coach Donovan Hand of the Red Bay baseball program. We appreciate his time and for him joining us on the show tonight. We'll see how well he does with the picks this weekend. Not a great slate of games, but he was generous enough to make his picks with us tonight. That does it for this show tonight. If you want to catch the Russellville football game tonight, me and my partner Ty Wills, we're broadcasting the game live from Golden Tiger Stadium at 7 o'clock. But with that said, this has been the Football Friday Tailgate Show here on WGOL. My name is Kadin Pounders, and we hope to see you again, same time, same place, next Friday.